Welcome to Ever the Wiser, your home for behavioral insight on how to address the climate crisis. I'm Meg Martineau, the founder of Ever the Wiser. I have my PhD in behavior analysis, and I've been in the field the past 17 years. I'm deeply passionate about using what we know from behavioral science to address the climate crisis. Our goal here is to disseminate relevant behavioral research to those both inside and outside the behavior analytic community, because we deeply believe that behavioral science has a lot to offer in terms of solutions to addressing climate change. We are so excited to launch our first CEU episode today. We are an ACE provider through the BACB. This episode is 25 minutes long and is available for a zero point 0.5 CE credit. We picked this time because it's great for a morning or afternoon commute, or if you're like me and you like to multitask while you're cleaning your home. You can pop some headphones in, do the dishes, or clean the house for 25 minutes and get a CE in the process. If you're looking to get CEs through us, just pay attention to the 2 secret code words that are embedded in each episode. Make sure to jot them down because at the end of the episode, you'll need to go to our website, everthewiser.com, and put them in order to get credit for listening. Don't forget that a portion of your money will be going to environmental organizations of your choice. When you're checking out, you'll be given a mini preference assessment and asked which organization you'd like your money to go towards. Getting your CEs from us really is a win-win. You're expanding your knowledge on sustainability issues, which hopefully positively influences you on your day-to-day, and you're helping fund efforts to directly lower greenhouse gas emissions. Here at Ever the Wiser, you're expanding your mind and healing the planet at the same time. The first talk today is called The Ripple Effects of Committing to Sustainable Action. It really tells the personal story of how I went from knowing behavioral science has the answers to actually doing the work. I have a few points I hope you take home with you today. The first is how much easier it was to implement a broad-scale community-based intervention than I ever thought. I hope the field of behavior analysis can finally jump from knowing that we can make an impact toward climate change to actually doing the work. Another point I hope resonates with you is that by creating behavior change in your community, you can create these really big ripple effects that you don't anticipate. Many times, small, simple tweaks can make a large shift in the cultural contingencies around you. What I'm going to share with you today is a story of doing the work, putting the effort in, creating high impact behavior change in your daily life, and getting so many more positive metrics of success than I ever could have anticipated. Behavior analysis really has the answers. Climate change is a behavioral issue. We have long had the technology to implement solutions to climate change, but we have generally been unable to create that large-scale community change. I'd like to start with this quote from one of my favorite psychologists. Look at the world around you. It may seem like an immovable, implacable place. It is not. With the slightest push in just the right place, it can be tipped. This is from Malcolm Gladwell's book, The Tipping Point, which if you hadn't had the chance, he discusses certain environmental factors that influence social behavior. He writes in the everyday vernacular, but he really understands our behavioral lens. I love this quote because it just nails it. If we're thoughtful and take time to figure out exactly what behaviors we want to start changing around us, we can design for those to spread socially. Once we start creating behavior change, that behavior change then can serve as an SD for others and promote others to do the same. Figuring out where to push and how to do it is completely within our skill set. It's really the basics to being an effective BCBA. Figure out a target behavior, make it happen in a way with high social validity, and design for some sort of reinforcement. In the climate change realm, this concept has been termed social diffusion by Doug Mackenzie-Mohr from his book, Fostering Sustainable Behavior. This is a great book if you're really serious about climate change and integrating behavioral science. Anyway, he has a whole chapter in his book on how to speed up the adoption of new behaviors. Also known as the diffusion of innovations theory, it's the idea that there is a pattern and speed to which new ideas, practices, and products spread through the population. Using techniques to promote social diffusion works best when the behaviors we want to see more of aren't the established norms. It's this whole idea that people are incredibly influenced by what people around them are doing. This is a quote from Mackenzie-Mohr's book, Fostering Sustainable Behavior. Conversations that we have with others, particularly with those whom we trust and perceive as similar to ourselves, have an inordinate influence. People really tend to underestimate the impact that their own behavior has to those around them. I get really excited about this idea because it's so in line with the concept of just being the change that you want to see in the world. It's also related. One great example of social diffusion comes from this study that is referenced in the Doug Mackenzie-Mohr book. This study was completed by Oskamp and Friends in 1991 and is called Factors Influencing Curbside Recycling Behavior from Environment and Behavior. In this study, a survey was completed that wanted to investigate factors influencing curbside recycling. And the authors found that recycling patterns of your friends and neighbors predicted what your recycling behavior looks like. So if I went to your neighbors and observed their recycling habits, I could reliably predict how you recycle. Much more so than we all like to admit, we imitate those around us, for better or worse. Seeing someone engage in a behavior becomes a prompt for those around you and also creates observational learning opportunities. We know the power of imitation and observational learning. Why not use them to our advantage by modeling the change we wish to see? It also forces a question that's important for all of us to reflect on. Who are you influenced by? And who do you have the potential to influence? Our everyday behavior is quite powerful. We all have so much more power than we realize. This is especially true when we start thinking of behavior at a collective scale. Collective behavior shift really is the ultimate goal, and we get there by changing our individual behavior first. Thankfully, our field of behavior analysis knows just how to do that. Our field really has many of the answers of how to address climate change. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break for our first secret code word, but when we return, we'll walk through an example of how just that can happen, how an individual behavior analyst can make waves in their communities.
Hello, listeners. Grab a pen for your first code word. Your first code word is fire. F-I-R-E. Fire. When you are done listening to this episode, head on over to everthewiser.com where you can purchase your CE.
So let's jump right in. I'd like to share my story of how an individual behavior analyst can create social diffusion and influence the culture in their communities. Since we're talking about ripple effects, this story really started at Babbitt in 2018, where I had the pleasure of seeing Susan Schneider's presentation. Her talk was a spark for me that inspired me to take action. It's my hope that as audience members today, some of you come to the same conclusions as I did, that we as BCBAs have the power to make a significant impact on addressing climate change, and that it makes a lot of sense for us to do it in our individual communities right now. So I'm a typical BCBA. I've worked in public and private schools, primarily providing ABA for autistic students and their families. While in public school, I worked in Newton, Mass., primarily at the elementary level. As I walk through the story, I'll be sharing some resources that really helped me along the way, and the first resource that I use to figure out just even where to begin is Drawdown. If you're an engaged citizen concerned about the future of the planet, Drawdown is definitely worth your time. It started as a book outlining the top 100 solutions to climate change and is now a comprehensive website that includes a mini video course to make the information easily accessible. They list and outline the top solutions to climate change. After checking out Drawdown, I realized that focusing on composting made a lot of sense because it's so high impact, and I had access to a large lunchroom at the school that was not currently composting. And just as a quick aside, one of the reasons why composting is so high impact is because many times it prevents methane from being released from landfills. And methane is one of the more problematic greenhouse gases because it can't be recaptured like carbon can through trees in the oceans. Once methane's up, it's up. So preventing its release through behavior change is very high impact. I also knew that the administration at my school wanted to get composting up and running, but they never seemed to be able to get it accomplished. So I did something wild. I figured out a meaningful target behavior to help the planet. Not exactly an earth-shattering idea for us, but this in and of itself can be a relatively groundbreaking perspective to the right environmental organization or person that's motivated to help. Many times people want to help, and we're really, really lucky to have the trained mindset to pick a clear target behavior of significance. So the next thing I did was take a baseline. I went on a lunch and just sat and observed how the operation was run. By watching in the cafeteria, I quickly understood a lot of the dynamics, and I saved myself time in the long run by doing this. I could see firsthand any barriers and identify the critical players, which really helped me hone in on where I needed to spend my time. Taking a baseline required me to figure out what I would measure. Here we landed on the reduction in the amount of trash. In this context, initially it was tempting to measure an increase in the amount of composting, but that really isn't the point. This also highlights why behavior analysts and our precision with measurement is critical. We don't want to increase the amount of food not eaten. We want to decrease the amount of trash that is produced. Reducing the amount of trash, that terminal product, could be influenced by a number of strategies, like using reusable materials, students and teachers saving any uneaten food for later, or ensuring students are only taking what they plan to eat from lunchtime. All of these are fantastic green behaviors, but for this intervention, the only one we focused on was really providing students and teachers with composting bins. Next is a little trick that many behavior analysts utilize, especially if you, let's say, work in a public school with a lot of different people you need to interact with on a daily basis. I did my best to establish myself as a condition reinforcer. My goal whenever I'm doing this is when people see me, they generally want to interact with me instead of running in the other direction. The general rule of thumb is to be kind and helpful, especially to the people who will be impacted the most by any intervention I'm recommending. So I made sure I spent some unrushed time with the people it would impact the most and asked them lots of questions about what was working. I really spent some time getting to know them. This helped me figure out how I could lower response effort on their part. It also gave them an outlet to be heard and feel like they're part of the process instead of just simply being told what to do. Something like composting, although the whole community was pushing for it, it really relies on the backs of custodians and lunch staff to implement. So understanding their hurdles to implementation was really critical. I feel like if I skipped this step, none of the intervention would have been as effective as it was. Next, I figured out an intervention and reinforcement system that we could implement. We landed on a raffle lottery system where the target behavior was students correctly sorting their trash. We scheduled both adult and student volunteers to be behind the bins the week it was rolled out. This allowed for all those critical pieces of reinforcement to be there. It was immediate, individualized, contingent, and we could provide descriptive praise. Even though I was spearheading this, having other members of the community involved definitely helped, and I also think it helped facilitate more social diffusion. With climate change, people want to help, but many times don't know where to start. This was a very tangible way to get more people in the community involved. And it also made them feel like experts because everyone was asking questions about where certain things would be sorted. Um, so for the raffle lottery system, when we saw students engage in the target behavior, which was correctly sorting their trash, we praised them and they got a raffle ticket. At the end of each lunch, we picked 10 kids, announced their names, and had them come up to pick out a prize in the prize bin. We designed for reinforcement to be cost effective and time efficient. We only ran the raffle system for 1 week when we rolled it out, so it only took 8 hours of direct time in the cafeteria to implement. We also tried to pick prizes that were environmentally conscious. So we offered recycled pencils, notebook pads, bracelets made from recycled flip-flops, and earth erasers. The kids went bananas for it. You would have thought I was giving out cars just seeing the level of excitement they had. One of the custodians at one point took over the mic and wanted to help call up the winners. It was definitely a huge hit. It really felt like the Price is Right, everyone running down the aisles. And the level of excitement and how well received this relatively simple reinforcement system was, and how it was embraced by the community, was pretty eye opening. We could have stopped there, and I would imagine our effects would be compelling. But I did my research before starting this project, and I knew from Fostering Sustainable Behavior by Doug Mackenzie-Mohr that I was going for a community based intervention. As a result, I embedded components to include social diffusion. I also want to point out that I was not doing this for research purposes. I'm not planning on submitting these data for a journal. I really just wanted to get into the weeds and create some messy, broad scale change that could help address the climate change where I live. If you're a researcher, fantastic, awesome. I hope we can get more and more behavior analysts looking at sustainability, especially during their graduate years. There's so much good work to be done. So, anyway, I took a leap and attempted social diffusion, even though it's something I typically don't program for in my clinical work. So, this is what it looked like. We took over an all school assembly. We showed a video of what composting was, how to do it, and described why reducing trash is important. And a very passionate student told her story about keeping the earth clean. We finished the presentation announcing that I would be leading a green team at school and encouraged students to sign up. One additional piece that we did to make it more comprehensive was add a pledge. This idea was also taken from Doug Mackenzie-Mohr's book. None of this stuff, I'm reinventing the wheel. It's all been done before. I was just integrating it in my day to day. So this is what the pledge looked like that we came up with. The goal was to reduce the amount of waste that students produced at home and school. All of the students in the school were given a pledge that they would sign with their parents and then return to the school. We did this to help prompt discussions at home about composting and hopefully make composting a more commonplace practice throughout our community. So, when all of this was said and done, there were some pretty tangible outcomes of success. Most tangibly, we got a 50% reduction in the amount of trash produced during lunch, which is just awesome. Thinking about replicating numbers at a larger scale like this gets me so excited. That is so much methane not being released into the air, and that matters. We also got 350 pledges returned to us. That was 70% of the school. The green team, which I thought would be only about 5 to 10 students, ended up being 70 students who were interested. The social diffusion totally worked. It started a massive buzz around the school on the topic. I had students coming up to me daily with ways we can make our school more sustainable. Our green team was actually celebrated by a citywide program for their sustainability efforts. They are just great kids and so motivated. They even graphed common food items throw away in the lunchroom. As you can see, carrots are not a popular item, and I did not tell them to graph this. They kind of did this on their own, but obviously I loved it. This group meets weekly at school. They have accomplished letter writing campaigns promoting solar installation throughout the city and even organized an all school cleanup outside of school. Talk about massive ripple effects. The kindergarten teachers also requested that we help the kindergarten students learn how to properly sort their trash because they had a lot of questions the week we rolled it out. The green team totally rose to the occasion. They developed a lesson and presented it to the kindergarten students. It was super adorable and facilitated many great conversations about where waste goes and how all students can make a difference based on their daily decisions. Going through this process created young change makers that are invested in improving their community, and they're more motivated than ever to keep working on this. There was also this unintended consequence of the students reinforcing my behavior. The unexpected happiness and joy I received while watching these little change makers do their thing has definitely stuck with me. It really was another example of how if you point people in the right direction, they want to help and be part of the solution. Here are some even more metrics of success. The green team now has a budget for projects that's happily supported by the PTO. The message about helping the earth at the school resonated so much with some students that they wanted to do more. So a group of third graders outside of the green team decided they wanted to start cleaning up the playground during recess. And now it was like a regular thing that they do. The DPW in Newton reported to me that this was the smoothest rollout yet, which I take as a sign that there really is something here. There is a special sauce going on when you mix behavioral analysis with waste reduction initiatives. Another unanticipated outcome was collaboration across disciplines and with the waste management industry. I was lucky enough to meet Juanita Traber in this process. She is the Director of Sustainable Materials Management through the DPW department in Newton. She is just fantastic, wonderful, and agreed to share her knowledge and expertise at the Babbitt Conference in 2019. We presented our work and made the case for why more behavior analysts should and would be successful at helping the waste management industry tackle many of their common problems. It was a huge hit. Our room was packed with people. We even made it onto their Instagram page. At Ever the Wiser, we're here to talk about anything and everything that can help slow down the warming of the planet. There are a lot of behaviors contributing to that, so there are a lot of solutions as a result of that, and a lot of industries also working towards solutions. So today we talked a lot about waste management, but really what I'm trying to get to here is collaboration is critical if you have a specific area of interest related to climate change. And it really was invaluable to me to hear specifically from an expert in waste management on what their biggest challenges are. So when I asked her, like, hey, what are your biggest behavioral challenges, she described the following: wish cycling, which is where people wish they could recycle products that they have, where they put items in recycling that can't be recycled, is a big problem because it contaminates recycling. She also described how people putting plastic bags in recycling is a huge challenge. It's dangerous and expensive because all those bags get tangled up in the processing equipment. And getting policy momentum for something called extended producer responsibility. So, what exactly is extended producer responsibility? Well, as we know, there's a lot of waste out there, and the responsibility for what to do with that waste and the costs associated with it fall upon municipal systems and the public sector to process it. Extended producer responsibility, or EPR, refers to shifting those end of life costs and the management responsibilities to the companies producing those products. So, for instance, let's say you drink a Coca-Cola product and you're left with a plastic container. Right now, getting rid of that waste falls on the public sector. But if EPR policy gets approved, that responsibility shifts to Coca-Cola and they need to manage it. It also provides incentives to manufacturers to incorporate environmental considerations into the design of their products and packaging. It sounds like a no-brainer to me. Maine and Oregon have passed legislation incorporating EPR, giving advocates a lot of hope that similar bills can be passed in other states. So if you see legislation for EPR in your state, now you know what it is, and I hope you give some serious consideration for advocating for it. Collaboration across disciplines led me to better understanding EPR policy, and it led to another unexpected positive outcome of this project. Juanita invited me to be the keynote opening speaker at the annual Mass Recycle Conference in 2022, meaning I had an opportunity as a behavior analyst to speak to almost 200 sustainable material managers and DPW directors across the state of Massachusetts, and really talk about how our field can help their industry. This talk was incredibly well received. I was the highest rated opening speaker in 4 years, and I'm not tooting my own horn here just for kicks. Anyone that knows me knows that's not my style. I was the highest rated speaker because the information we have and can share with others is incredibly valuable. And there are audiences out there that are in desperate need of the information we hold, especially if we take the time to disseminate properly and translate our science in a language that is tangible for the everyday audience. In the context of my talk, I really just discussed our bread and butter, but framed it for the waste management industry. I talked about reinforcement, lowering response effort, how to conduct a baseline, and social diffusion from the Mackenzie-Mohr book. When I think about impacts we can make and how our individual behavior can be stones that we throw into water that create these kind of ripple effects around you, this felt like I threw a huge boulder. There is big potential for collaboration across disciplines with behavior analysts and the waste management industry. I'm so grateful I had a chance to experience this firsthand because it took the idea of, yeah, behavior analysts have the technology to help with climate change to actually reaching a high impact audience where tools can be incredibly valuable. All right, back to where we started. I know from firsthand experience how powerful our tools can be at transforming cultural contingencies around us. It's more apparent to me than ever that we have the power to be the ones who tip the world around us. Just think, if we all start knocking dominoes over together, our field could really make this happen.
Hello, listeners. It's now time for your second code word. To get your CE for this episode, go to everthewiser.com and enter the two code words from today. Your second code word is spark. 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 Be sure to jot that down so you can get your CE. Thank you for listening.
So, if there's any message that I'd like for you to take home with you today, is to remind yourself how powerful your individual behavior is and how shifting meaningful target behaviors can create some big ripple effects in your community. Take a second, look around, see what interventions you can help implement in your home, place of work, or even better at the community level. Get out there, start making a change. If you're like me, you'll be shocked at how easy it is and at all the positive outcomes that occur as a result. I hope you enjoyed our first episode. There's so much more to come. Our goal is to provide meaningful and helpful information. So if there's a topic you want to hear more about, please reach out and let us know. You can email us at everthewiser.com or follow us on Instagram. Our handle is ever.the.wiser. We're also on YouTube. Our handle there is everthewiser. And there's even a TikTok account where we'll be releasing information on when new CEs become available. If you connect with me on LinkedIn, I'm Meg Martineau. I will be posting when new CEs are up. So there's plenty of ways to stay informed. That's it. Woo! First episode. Take care, my fellow change makers. And until next time, keep creating those ripple effects around you.